Dying grizzly bear was attacked by wolves. What this human baby did put everyone in tears. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Every bit of your support helps us create even more amazing stories for you. The forest grew quiet as evening descended upon the wilderness of Montana. Shadows stretched across the pine-covered ground, creating dark pools beneath the ancient trees. In a small cabin nestled at the edge of this vast expanse of wilderness, Lily Morgan gently rocked her 15-month-old daughter Savannah, humming a soft lullaby that her own mother had sung to her. "Just one more story, and then it's bedtime," Lily whispered, her voice barely audible over the crackling fire in the hearth. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the scent of pine and the promise of an early winter. Connor Adams, Lily's husband and a forest ranger, had been called away to assist with a wildfire prevention effort in the neighboring county, leaving mother and daughter alone in their remote cabin. Savannah's eyes, blue as the summer sky, gazed up at her mother with innocent curiosity. She was too young to understand the dangers that lurked in the wilderness surrounding their home. Too innocent to comprehend the delicate balance of life and death that played out daily in the forest beyond their windows. As Lily turned the page of the storybook, a deep, pained groan echoed from somewhere in the forest. The sound was unlike anything she had heard before, guttural, primal, filled with agony. Lily's hand froze mid-turn, her breath catching in her throat. Savannah, sensing her mother's sudden tension, wiggled in her arms, her tiny face scrunching up in confusion. "It's okay, sweetie," Lily murmured, though uncertainty laced her words. She rose from the rocking chair and moved to the window, peering out into the gathering darkness. The moon had risen, casting an ethereal glow over the clearing that separated their cabin from the dense forest. And there, at the edge of the trees, lay a massive form, its fur shimmering silver in the moonlight. A grizzly bear. Enormous even from this distance, its massive paws splayed out before it, its chest heaving with labored breaths. Lily's heart pounded against her ribs as she watched the creature struggle to rise, only to collapse back to the earth with another agonized groan. Blood darkened the fur of its flank, glistening wetly in the moonlight. The bear was injured, severely. Lily reached for the phone to call for help, but as her fingers touched the receiver, another sound cut through the night, the haunting howl of wolves, not one, but many, a pack communicating with each other as they converged on the scent of blood. The bear's blood. "Oh no," Lily whispered, her eyes widening with realization. The injured grizzly was about to become prey. Nature was taking its course, as it had for millennia, but something about witnessing such a magnificent creature reduced to helplessness stirred something deep within her. Savannah squirmed in her arms, her tiny hands reaching toward the window, as if she too sensed the drama unfolding outside. Lily held her daughter closer, torn between the safety of remaining inside and the strange, inexplicable urge to do something, anything, to intervene in what was about to happen. The howls grew closer, more urgent. Through the trees, Lily could see flashes of movement, gray shapes darting between trunks, drawing ever nearer to the fallen giant. The bear sensed them too. It raised its massive head, baring yellowed teeth in a silent snarl of defiance. Despite its injuries, it wasn't surrendering without a fight. "We should stay inside," Lily told herself firmly, stepping back from the window. "This isn't our business, this is nature." But even as the words left her lips, Savannah let out a curious sound, not a cry, but something between a coo and a whimper. Her eyes remained fixed on the window, on the scene beyond the glass. And in that moment, as Lily looked down at her daughter's innocent face, something shifted in the atmosphere of the small cabin. Something inexplicable. something that would change everything. The first wolf emerged from the shadows, its silver-gray coat catching the moonlight as it slunk toward the fallen bear. Lean and powerful, it moved with the confident grace of a hunter who had already won the battle. Behind it, 3 more wolves appeared, their golden eyes gleaming with hunger and anticipation. They circled the grizzly, maintaining a cautious distance, testing the bear's remaining strength. Lily stood frozen at the window, Savannah clutched tightly in her arms. The little girl had gone strangely quiet, as if she understood the gravity of what was unfolding before them. The bear tried to rise again, its massive form quivering with the effort. It managed to lift itself partially before collapsing once more, sending a puff of dust, rising into the moonlit air. The wolves, emboldened by this display of weakness, edged closer. "We shouldn't be watching this," Lily whispered, but she couldn't tear her eyes away. The majestic bear, once the undisputed king of these forests, now lay helpless before smaller but more numerous predators. There was something profoundly sad about witnessing such power brought low, such fierce independence reduced to vulnerability. The lead wolf darted forward suddenly, nipping at the bear's hindquarters before dancing away from a weak swipe of massive claws. It was testing, toying, knowing that time was on the pack's side. The bear's breathing grew more labored, its movements becoming sluggish as blood continued to seep from its wound. Lily realized she was crying, silent tears sliding down her cheeks as she watched nature's harsh reality play out. "This is just how things are," she told herself. "The circle of life." But the words felt hollow, insufficient in the face of such raw suffering. Savannah squirmed in her arms, making a sound of distress. Her tiny hands pressed against the window glass, fingers splayed as if reaching for the wounded animal. Lily stepped back, concerned by her daughter's unusual behavior. "No, honey, we can't help. It's not safe," she murmured, trying to turn away from the window. But Savannah became unexpectedly rigid in her arms, her face scrunching up in what looked like determination rather than fear. Outside, the wolves had begun to close in, their circle tightening around the bear. The grizzly's eyes were beginning to dull, the fight visibly draining from its massive body. One of the wolves lunged forward, tearing at the bear's already wounded flank. The grizzly roared, a sound so filled with pain and defiance that it seemed to shake the very walls of the cabin. Savannah let out a wail in response, a cry so sudden and sharp that Lily nearly dropped her in surprise. The baby's face was flushed, her eyes still fixed on the scene outside. And then, in a movement so quick that Lily had no chance to prevent it, Savannah pushed against her mother's chest, squirming with unexpected strength. "Savannah, stop!" Lily gasped, struggling to maintain her grip on the writhing child. But in her moment of surprise, her hold loosened just enough. Savannah slipped from her arms, landing with a soft thud on the wooden floor of the cabin. Before Lily could reach for her, the little girl was crawling with surprising speed toward the cabin door, which had been left slightly ajar to allow the evening breeze to cool the small home. "No!" Lily lunged after her daughter, but her foot caught on the edge of the rug. She stumbled, catching herself against the wall as Savannah pushed against the door with her tiny hands. The door swung open wider, revealing the full tableau of the wilderness drama beyond. The wolves froze at the sound of the door, their heads swiveling toward the cabin. The bear, too, seemed to sense the change, its dulling eyes shifting toward the unexpected movement. And there, silhouetted in the doorway, was Savannah, a 15-month-old child, barely able to walk, facing a scene of primal violence that had played out since time immemorial. Lily scrambled to her feet, her heart pounding with terror. "Savannah," she cried, rushing toward the door, but she stopped short, frozen in disbelief at what happened next. Savannah pulled herself up to stand, wobbling slightly on unsteady legs, and then, with tiny determined steps, she began to toddle toward the fallen bear and its circling attackers. Time seemed to stop as Savannah took one unsteady step after another across the moonlit clearing. Lily stood paralyzed in the doorway, her voice caught in her throat, her body refusing to move despite her brain screaming at her to run, to snatch her child back from certain danger. The wolves had gone eerily still, their predatory focus interrupted by this strange, small creature moving without fear toward them. "Savannah!" Lily finally managed to cry out, her voice breaking with terror. But her daughter continued forward as if in a trance, her tiny face set with determination that seemed impossible for one so young. The lead wolf, a battle-scarred male with intelligent eyes, took a step back, ears flattening against its head in confusion. The dying grizzly bear lifted its massive head, nostrils flaring as it caught Savannah's scent. Its eyes, clouded with pain but still alert, tracked the toddler's approach. In any other circumstance, a bear, especially a wounded one, would be the deadliest threat to a human child. But something was happening here that defied all natural law, all instinct, all reason. Savannah stopped about 10 feet from the bear, swaying slightly on her feet. The wolves had begun to back away, forming a wider circle, their predatory aggression replaced by wary uncertainty. The smallest among them whined softly, pawing at the ground in agitation. "Savannah, don't move," Lily whispered, finally forcing her frozen limbs to action. She began to edge slowly toward her daughter, moving with deliberate care, terrified that any sudden movement might trigger the animal's predatory instincts. "Mommy's coming. Stay still, baby." But Savannah did not stay still. Instead, she lifted one small hand and made a sound. Not a word, but a soft crooning noise that seemed to resonate in the still night air. The bear's ears twitched, and incredibly, it responded with a low rumble that was neither threatening nor aggressive. Lily was close enough now to lunge for her daughter, but something held her back, the same inexplicable force that seemed to have drawn Savannah to this moment. There was something happening here that transcended the logical world, something that spoke to deeper, more primeval connections. Savannah tottered forward again, now just a few feet from the massive bear. Lily's heart threatened to burst from her chest as she watched her baby reach out a tiny hand toward one of the most dangerous predators in North America. The bear's eyes, still fierce despite its weakened state, held no malice as it watched the approaching child. "Please," Lily whispered, though she wasn't sure if she was pleading with Savannah, the bear, or some higher power that might be orchestrating this impossible moment. Savannah's fingers, impossibly small against the backdrop of wilderness and danger, touched the bear's massive paw. The contact was gentle, barely a whisper of skin against fur. The bear did not move, did not growl, did not react as any wild animal should when touched by a human. Instead, it exhaled a long, shuddering breath, as if releasing something long held inside. One of the wolves whined again, louder this time, and began to back away. The others followed suit, their retreat unhurried but definite. They melted into the shadows of the forest, golden eyes gleaming one last time before disappearing completely. Lily crept forward, her breathing shallow, ready to snatch her daughter away at the first sign of danger. But the bear remained still, its massive head now lowered to the ground, eyes half closed as it watched Savannah with what could only be described as peaceful acceptance. Savannah placed her other hand on the bear's snout, her tiny fingers barely spanning the width of its nose. She made that strange crooning sound again, and the bear's eyes closed fully, its labored breathing becoming smoother, more regular. Lily reached her daughter and knelt beside her, trembling from head to toe. "Savannah," she whispered, gently placing a hand on her daughter's back. "We need to go inside now." But Savannah looked up at her mother with eyes that seemed far older than her 15 months, filled with a wisdom and compassion that defied her tender age. She patted the bear's nose once more, and then reached for her mother, allowing herself to be lifted into Lily's shaking arms. As Lily backed away, holding her precious child close to her heart, the bear opened its eyes one last time. In that moment, Lily would later swear, there was a look of gratitude in those wild, fading eyes, a connection as ancient as the forest itself. Lily carried Savannah back to the cabin, her legs weak with fading adrenaline. Her mind struggled to process what she had just witnessed. Her baby daughter, barely able to walk, communing with a dying predator while wolves retreated into the shadows. It defied explanation. It defied reality itself. Once inside, she closed and locked the door, then sank into the rocking chair, still clutching Savannah to her chest. The little girl was calm, almost serene, her eyes heavy with approaching sleep. How could she be so peaceful after what had just happened? How could she have known to approach the bear with such fearlessness? "What did you do out there?" Lily whispered, smoothing Savannah's soft curls. "How did you know?" Savannah looked up at her mother, her blue eyes reflecting the lamplight. She smiled, a smile that seemed to hold secrets no child should possess, and then nestled against Lily's shoulder, sighing contentedly. Outside, the night had grown utterly quiet. No wolf howls, no sounds of struggle. Lily wondered if the bear was already gone, slipped away into whatever waits beyond this life. She rocked gently, humming to Savannah until the child's breathing deepened into sleep. Only then did Lily allow herself to cry. Silent tears of relief, wonder, and lingering fear. Whatever had happened tonight had changed something fundamental in her understanding of the world. There were connections, communications, that existed beyond human comprehension. She must have dozed off because she startled awake to the sound of a vehicle approaching. Headlights swept across the cabin walls as a truck pulled up outside. Connor was home early. Lily carefully laid Savannah in her crib and went to the door, suddenly uncertain about how to explain what had transpired. Connor's face was tired, but broke into a smile when he saw her. "Hey, you're still up. I managed to get away early when the team from Missoula arrived." He embraced her, then pulled back, noticing her expression. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." Lily took his hand and led him to the window. "Look out there," she said softly, "at the edge of the clearing." Connor peered through the glass, squinting into the darkness. The moon illuminated the massive form of the grizzly bear, still lying where it had fallen. But something had changed. Around the bear's body, forming a protective semicircle, sat 3 wolves, the same ones that had been hunting it earlier. They were not feeding, not approaching, simply watching, keeping vigil. "What the hell?" Connor muttered. "I've never seen anything like that. Wolves and bears are natural enemies." Lily squeezed his hand. "Something happened tonight," she whispered. "Something I still don't understand." She told him everything. Savannah's strange behavior, her fearless approach to the bear, the retreat of the wolves, the moment of contact between child and predator. As she spoke, she could see the disbelief in Connor's eyes slowly transform into wonder. "That's impossible," he said when she finished. "She could have been killed." "I know," Lily replied. "But she wasn't. It was like they understood each other, like she knew what to do. Connor shook his head slowly. I've worked in these forests for 15 years. I've seen bears and wolves interact dozens of times. Never like this. He looked toward Savannah's crib, where the little girl slept peacefully. Never like this, he repeated softly. They watched through the window as one of the wolves stood, stretched, and approached the bear. Instead of attacking, it lay down beside the massive body, resting its muzzle on its paws. The other wolves remained in their positions, sentinels in the night. I think, Lily said slowly, that Savannah somehow showed them compassion, and they understood it. Connor pulled her close. The old-timers who lived in these mountains used to talk about children who could speak to animals. Spirit children, they called them. I always thought they were just stories. Lily rested her head against his shoulder. Maybe all children can. Maybe it's something we lose as we grow older. Through the night, they took turns watching the strange tableau outside their cabin. The wolves remained with the bear until dawn began to lighten the eastern sky. Then, one by one, they rose and slipped away into the forest, their mission, whatever it had been, complete. When full daylight arrived, Connor went outside to examine the bear. He returned with tears in his eyes. "It's gone," he said simply. "Passed peacefully as far as I can tell." And Lily, his voice caught. There were wildflowers placed on its paw, just a few small ones, like someone had picked them and laid them there. Lily's eyes widened. That's impossible. Savannah was with me all night after we came inside. They looked at each other in silent question, then toward Savannah, who was now awake in her crib, playing contentedly with her stuffed animals. "I'll call the Wildlife Service," Connor said finally. "They'll want to know about the bear." But both knew that certain parts of last night's events would remain untold. Some experiences were too sacred, too inexplicable for official reports. Days passed, and life at the cabin settled back into its rhythm. The Wildlife Service had come to collect the bear's body, attributing its death to natural causes and injuries likely sustained in a territorial dispute with another bear. Connor had said nothing about the wolves' vigil or Savannah's midnight encounter. Some things were better left unexplained, but subtle changes had begun to manifest around their home. Each morning, Lily would find fresh animal tracks circling the cabin, wolf prints, deer hooves, even the occasional mountain lion paw mark. None approached the doors or windows. They simply circled, as if checking, protecting. A week after the incident, Lily was hanging laundry outside when she noticed Savannah sitting on the porch steps, staring intently at the tree line. Following her daughter's gaze, Lily froze. At the edge of the forest stood a wolf, the same battle-scarred male that had led the pack that night. It made no move to approach, simply watched with those intelligent golden eyes. Lily's first instinct was to snatch Savannah up and rush inside, but something stopped her. The wolf posed no threat. She knew this with certainty that defied explanation. Savannah raised a tiny hand in greeting, and the wolf dipped its head slightly before turning and disappearing into the trees. That evening, as Connor returned from work, he paused at the edge of the clearing, staring at something near their garden. "Lily," he called softly, "come look at this." She joined him, Savannah in her arms, and gasped softly. A young deer stood calmly eating from their vegetable patch. Behavior so unusual it bordered on supernatural. Wild deer were skittish, especially around humans, but this one merely lifted its head, regarded them with liquid eyes, and continued browsing on their lettuce plants. "I should chase it off," Connor murmured, "but somehow I don't want to." Savannah made a soft sound, reaching toward the deer. The animal's ears twitched, and it looked directly at the child. For a long moment, they regarded each other across the space. Then the deer delicately stepped away from the garden and melted back into the forest. "It's happening more often," Lily said that night as they sat on the porch, watching the stars emerge. Savannah had been put to bed, her innocent face peaceful in sleep. Animals coming close, watching her, watching us. Connor nodded slowly. "The rangers talk, you know. There are stories circulating. A moose that led a lost hiker back to the trail. Wolves that guided a stranded climber to safety. Things that don't make sense." "When did these stories start?" Lily asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "About a week ago," Connor confirmed. "Right after that night with the bear." They sat in silence, contemplating the implications. Something had changed in the forest. Something fundamental in the relationship between its wild inhabitants and the humans who lived among them. And somehow, their 15-month-old daughter stood at the center of it all. "Do you think she'll remember?" Lily asked finally. "When she's older?" Connor squeezed her hand. "I don't know, but I think part of her will always know. Some connections go deeper than memory." Inside the cabin, Savannah slept peacefully. One small hand curled around a tiny object she had refused to relinquish. A single bear fur that had somehow found its way into her possession. In her dreams, she ran with wolves through moonlit forests, soared with eagles above mountain peaks, and swam with otters in crystal streams. The language of the wild spoke to her, and she answered in kind. And somewhere in the depths of the forest, wild creatures shared their own stories, of a small human child who had touched a dying giant with compassion, who had shown them another way to be. The whispers spread from pack to pack, herd to herd, crossing species boundaries as ancient as the mountains themselves. The forest had been changed. The forest remembered. And in the years to come, as Savannah grew from toddler to child to young woman, the wild things would watch over her, their unlikely guardian, their bridge to a world that had forgotten how to listen. As months turned into years, Savannah grew from a toddler into a curious, spirited child of 4. Her connection with the natural world only deepened with time. While other children her age played with toys and watched cartoons, Savannah spent hours by the forest's edge, sitting in silent communion with the creatures that emerged to greet her. Lily and Connor had grown accustomed to the strange harmony that existed between their daughter and the wilderness. They no longer panicked when they spotted wolf tracks near the garden, or when a fox curled up to nap on their porch steps. The wildlife seemed to recognize boundaries, never entering the cabin, never approaching when strangers visited, maintaining the delicate secret that existed between them and the little girl with knowing eyes. "Mama," Savannah said one spring morning as they tended the garden together, "Aspen is having her babies today." Lily looked up from the tomato plants she was staking. "Aspen? Who's Aspen, sweetie?" Savannah pointed toward the dense pines at the forest's edge. "The deer with the broken ear, she's having her babies behind the big fallen tree. 2 of them." Lily had learned not to dismiss her daughter's pronouncements, no matter how improbable they seemed. "How do you know, Savannah?" The little girl shrugged, her face serious as she patted soil around a young pepper plant. "She told me. Not with words, just told me." She looked up at her mother with eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of the ancient forest itself. "Can we take her some apples? She'll be hungry after." Later that day, Connor returned from his ranger duties with news that confirmed what Savannah had somehow known. A female deer, identifiable by her notched ear, had indeed given birth to twins in exactly the location Savannah had described. He had found them while checking trail conditions. "How does she know these things?" he asked Lily that night. His voice hushed as they watched Savannah sleeping peacefully. "It's not just coincidence anymore. It's happened too many times." Lily traced the curve of their daughter's cheek with gentle fingers. "I think that night with the bear, it opened something in her. A channel of communication that most of us lose before we can even speak." Connor nodded slowly. The Blackfeet elder who works at the Park Visitor Center, Joseph Standing Bear, he asked about Savannah the other day. Said his grandfather told stories about children who could hear the voices of animals, who bridged the gap between human and wild. He called them listeners. "Did you tell him about Savannah?" Lily asked, suddenly protective. "No," Connor assured her. "But I think he suspects. He gave me this." He produced a small leather pouch from his pocket. Said it was for protection and guidance for a young listener, that she would know what to do with it when the time came. Inside the pouch was a small carving of a bear made from deep green stone, polished smooth by generations of handling. When they showed it to Savannah the next morning, her eyes widened with recognition, though she had never seen it before. "It's for when I need to be brave," she said simply, closing her small fingers around it. The summer brought new visitors to their remote area, researchers studying wolf migration patterns. They set up camp near the cabin, installing trail cameras and collecting data. Savannah watched them with uncharacteristic wariness, staying close to the cabin when the scientists were nearby. "The animals are hiding," she told Lily one evening, her voice troubled. "They don't like the cameras. The pictures hurt their eyes at night." Sure enough, the researchers reported unusually low activity on their trail cameras, despite clear evidence of abundant wildlife in the area. Tracks appeared overnight, but no animals triggered the motion sensors. The lead scientist, Dr. Ethan Marshall, was baffled. "It's like they know where the cameras are," he complained to Connor over coffee on the porch. 20 years studying wolf behavior, and I've never seen anything like it." From her spot playing in the yard, Savannah looked up, her gaze meeting Dr. Marshall's. Something passed between them, a moment of connection that left the scientist blinking in confusion. "Remarkable child you have," he said to Connor, his voice slightly unsteady. "Those eyes, they seem to look right through you." That night, Savannah woke screaming from a nightmare, something she rarely experienced. Lily rushed to her side, gathering her trembling form close. "The mountain," Savannah sobbed. "The mountain is burning. The animals can't get out." Connor and Lily exchanged worried glances. Forest fires were an ever-present danger in the dry summer months, but there had been no reports of smoke or flames. Still, Connor called his supervisor, mentioning vague concerns about the northeastern ridge, the area Savannah had pointed to while still half asleep. The call may have saved countless lives. A lightning strike had indeed started a small fire on the back side of the ridge, invisible from the main valley but rapidly gathering strength in the tinder dry conditions. Fire crews were dispatched immediately, containing the blaze before it could explode into a devastating wildfire. As news of the early detection spread, Dr. Marshall watched Savannah with growing interest. "Lucky catch," he commented to Connor. "Another few hours and half the forest would have been gone. How did you know to check that specific area?" Connor gave a non-committal shrug. "Just a feeling. Rangers develop instincts after a while." But that evening, as Savannah sat on the porch steps, Dr. Marshall approached her cautiously, kneeling to meet her at eye level. "You knew about the fire, didn't you?" he asked softly, his scientific skepticism warring with what he had witnessed. "How did you know, Savannah?" The little girl studied him with those unnervingly wise eyes. "The same way I know you have a wolf inside you," she replied. "The same way I know you were lost in a forest when you were little, and a gray wolf led you back to your father. That's why you study them now." Dr. Marshall's face drained of color. He had never told anyone that story, not his colleagues, not his wife. It was a childhood experience so profound, so inexplicable, that he had buried it beneath layers of scientific rationality. "How could you possibly know that?" he whispered. Savannah smiled, the simple, innocent smile of a child, though her eyes held the depths of ancient knowledge. "The forest remembers," she said, "and now so do you." By the time Savannah turned 7, the forest had become an extension of herself. She moved through the trees with the sure-footed confidence of a creature born to the wild, knowing each path, each hidden spring, each den and nest. Her parents had established careful boundaries, areas she could explore alone, times she must return, signals for danger. But they had long since accepted that their daughter possessed an understanding of the wilderness that surpassed their own. What they couldn't know was that Savannah's gift was growing, evolving. It wasn't just animals anymore. She could feel the pulse of the trees, the quiet awareness of plants reaching toward sunlight, the ancient patience of stones. The forest spoke to her in 1,000 languages, and somehow she understood them all. The summer that changed everything began with rain. Days of it, drenching the mountains and swelling streams into roaring torrents. Savannah stood at her bedroom window, watching water pour from gray skies, her small face troubled. "Too much," she murmured. "The earth can't drink it all." Connor, passing by with a basket of laundry, paused at her door. "What's wrong, Wildflower?" he asked, using the nickname that had emerged naturally in the years since the bear incident. Savannah pressed her palm against the cool glass. "The mountain is getting heavy. The ground is sliding underneath." Connor frowned, setting down the basket. His daughter's pronouncements had proven accurate too many times to dismiss. "Which mountain, Savannah?" "Can you show me?" She led him to the topographical map he kept in his office, her finger unerringly finding a ridge about 15 miles north of their cabin. "Here, the trees are screaming. Their roots can't hold anymore." Connor made a call to the Park Service that afternoon, suggesting they check for potential landslides in that area. His colleagues respected his instincts, though they didn't understand their source. A team was dispatched the following morning. They returned with grim confirmation. A massive section of the hillside was showing signs of imminent collapse. Soil saturated beyond capacity, trees tilting at odd angles as their root systems began to fail. If it gave way, it would send tons of mud and debris directly into a popular camping area below. The evacuation order went out immediately. Campers grumbled about interrupted vacations as rangers ushered them to safety, but 2 days later, when the mountainside finally collapsed with a roar that echoed through the valley, not a single life was lost. News crews descended on the park, praising the miraculous foresight of the rangers who had predicted the disaster. Connor deflected questions, uncomfortable with praise he knew he didn't deserve. He was merely the messenger. The true warning had come from his 7-year-old daughter. Dr. Marshall returned that summer, now leading a broader environmental research team. In the 3 years since his first encounter with Savannah, he had kept her secret, but his scientific curiosity had never waned. He brought with him a new colleague, Dr. Jessica Brooks, a biologist specializing in interspecies communication. "Your daughter has quite a reputation among the rangers," Dr. Brooks commented to Lily as they shared tea on the porch. "They call her the forest whisperer. Say animals appear when she walks the trails, that she can predict weather changes before the meteorologists." Lily tensed, her protective instincts flaring. "She's just observant." Spends a lot of time outdoors. Dr. Brooks smiled gently. Mrs. Adams, I'm not here to expose or exploit your daughter. I've spent my career studying communication between species. Most of my colleagues think I'm pursuing fringe science. She leaned forward, voice dropping. But I've seen things in the field that defy conventional explanation. Children in indigenous communities who demonstrate abilities similar to what I've heard about Savannah. What exactly have you heard? Lily asked cautiously. That she warned of the fire last summer before any smoke was visible. That she predicted the landslide this spring. That animals behave differently around her. Dr. Brooks set down her teacup. I believe these abilities exist. More importantly, I believe they matter, not just as scientific curiosities but as essential connections we've lost in our modern world. Before Lily could respond, a commotion erupted from the tree line. Savannah emerged from the forest, running at full speed, her face streaked with tears. Behind her loped a young wolf, keeping pace but maintaining distance. "Mom!" Savannah cried, hurtling into Lily's arms. "They're coming! Men with guns in the North Valley! They're hunting the white wolf!" Dr. Brooks stood abruptly. White wolf. There hasn't been a white wolf documented in this range. But Connor, who had just returned from his shift, paled visibly. The rangers have been tracking reports of an unusual wolf for months. Larger than normal, with an almost white coat. Some are saying it's an Arctic wolf that's migrated south. Others think it's a rare genetic variation. He looked at his daughter. "How do you know about hunters, Savannah?" The little girl wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "Shadow told me," she said, gesturing to the young wolf that now sat at the forest's edge, watching them intently. "The white wolf is his mother. She has pups hidden in the high caves. The men have been tracking her for days. They want her fur, and they don't care about the pups." Dr. Brooks stared at the wolf, then at Savannah, scientific skepticism battling with the evidence before her eyes. "This is remarkable," she whispered. Connor was already reaching for his radio. "Poachers," he said grimly. "The white wolf has been protected since the first sighting. This is illegal hunting, and in a national forest no less." As he made the call to park headquarters, Savannah knelt beside the young wolf, her small hand hovering inches from its fur. "I promise," she whispered, her voice carrying a determination far beyond her years. "We'll help her." The wolf, Shadow, as Savannah had called him, looked directly into her eyes, an understanding passing between them that transcended human language. Then he turned and melted back into the forest, his message delivered. "A team is being assembled," Connor announced, clipping his radio back to his belt. "But it'll take at least an hour for them to reach the North Valley. By then, it might be too late," Savannah finished, her face pale with worry. "The hunters are close. They have dogs with them." Dr. Brooks had been quiet, observing with the keen eye of a scientist witnessing something that challenged the boundaries of established understanding. Now she spoke up. "I have a drone in my research equipment. We could use it to locate the hunters and track their movements until the rangers arrive." Connor nodded. "Good idea. I'll grab my gear." "I'm coming too," Savannah said firmly. Lily immediately shook her head. "Absolutely not. These are armed poachers, Savannah. It's too dangerous." "Mom," Savannah said, her voice quiet but resolute. "The white wolf won't come out for anyone else. She trusts me. She knows me through Shadow." "That's impossible," Lily protested. "You've never even seen this wolf." "Yes, I have," Savannah insisted. "Not with my eyes, but I know her. Just like I knew the bear. Please, Mom, the pups will die without her." Dr. Brooks stepped forward, her professional demeanor giving way to something more urgent. Mrs. Adams, I've studied cases like this for 20 years. If Savannah says she has a connection with this wolf, I believe her, and right now, that connection might be the only thing that saves this rare animal." Connor looked torn, his protective instincts as a father warring with his commitment as a forest ranger. "If, and it's a big if, we bring Savannah, she stays with me at all times. At the first sign of real danger, we retreat, no arguments." Lily wanted to protest further, but the determination in her daughter's eyes stopped her. This wasn't childish obstinance. It was the resolve of someone answering a call they could not ignore. "Be careful," she finally whispered, pulling Savannah into a tight embrace. "Remember, wild animals are still wild no matter what connection you feel." Within minutes, they were ready. Dr. Brooks had retrieved her drone, a sophisticated model with thermal imaging capabilities. Connor had his ranger gear, including a tranquilizer gun for emergencies. Savannah changed into sturdy hiking clothes, tucking the small green bear carving Joseph's standing bear had given her into her pocket. "For courage," she whispered to herself. They set off into the forest, Savannah leading with an unerring sense of direction that made Dr. Brooks raise her eyebrows. The little girl didn't hesitate at forks in the trail or pause to consult her father, who knew these woods better than anyone. She moved as if following an invisible thread, her steps sure, despite the increasingly rugged terrain. Has she always been able to navigate like this?" Dr. Brooks asked Connor quietly as they climbed a steep ridge. "Since she was about 4, he replied, watching his daughter with mingled pride and concern. "She's never gotten lost, not once. Says the trees show her the way." Dr. Brooks made a note in the small recorder she carried. "Fascinating. In my research, I've documented similar abilities in children from indigenous communities in South America and Australia. They describe it as reading the land. But it typically takes years of training from elders. Savannah seems to have developed this ability spontaneously." "Not spontaneously," Connor corrected, his voice dropping further. "It started after an incident when she was just over a year old. Something happened with a dying bear and a wolf pack. Something that changed her, or maybe awakened something that was already there." Before Dr. Brooks could press for details, Savannah stopped abruptly, raising her hand for silence. They had reached the edge of a small clearing, the forest thinning as the mountainside grew steeper. Savannah pointed upward, toward a rocky outcropping about half a mile ahead. "The cave is there," she whispered. "The pups are inside. The white wolf is nearby, watching for the hunters." Dr. Brooks unpacked her drone, setting it up with practiced efficiency. "Let's get a better view of what we're dealing with," she murmured. The small aircraft hummed to life, rising swiftly above the tree line. Through the control tablet screen, they could see the landscape spread out below them. Dense forest giving way to rocky slopes, the hidden world suddenly visible from above. Dr. Brooks switched to thermal imaging, scanning methodically. "There," Connor said, pointing to the screen. "Movement in that stand of pines about a quarter-mile east of us. 4 heat signatures, 3 human-sized, 1 smaller, probably a dog." Dr. Brooks nodded, directing the drone closer while keeping it high enough to avoid detection. "They're armed," she confirmed grimly as the image sharpened. "Rifles. Definitely not scientific observation equipment." "And there's our wolf," Connor added, indicating another heat signature moving swiftly along the ridge, staying hidden in the tree line. "She's trying to lead them away from the cave." Savannah had been watching intently, her small face tight with concern. Now she touched her father's arm. "We need to hurry. She's tired and scared. She hasn't eaten in 2 days because she's afraid to leave the pups alone for too long." Connor looked at his daughter with renewed amazement. "How do you know that?" "I just feel it," Savannah replied, struggling to explain. "Like her feelings are inside me too." "Empathic connection," Dr. Brooks murmured, more to herself than to them. "Extraordinary." Connor made a quick decision. "The Rangers won't get here in time. We need to intercept those poachers now." He checked his tranquilizer gun and radio. "Doctor, Brooks, can you keep the drone on them? I need exact locations." "Of course," she agreed. "But what's your plan?" "I'll identify myself as a ranger, inform them they're in violation of federal law, and order them to stand down," Connor said. "Most poachers will back off when confronted by authority." "And if they don't?" Dr. Brooks pressed. Connor's jaw tightened. "Then things get complicated. That's why I need you two to stay hidden. If anything goes wrong, take Savannah and get back to the cabin as fast as you can. Call for backup." "No," Savannah said suddenly, her voice stronger than either adult had ever heard it. "That won't work. The hunters have split up. See?" She pointed to the drone's screen, where indeed one of the heat signatures was now moving in a different direction from the others. "They're trying to circle around to the cave. They must have tracked the pups." Connor cursed under his breath. "You're right. I can't intercept all of them." "I have another idea," Savannah said, her eyes reflecting a wisdom far beyond her years. "But you have to trust me. Both of you." Dr. Brooks and Connor exchanged glances, scientific rationality and parental caution, battling with the inexplicable certainty that this child understood things they could not comprehend. "What do you want to do?" Connor finally asked. "I need to call for help," Savannah replied simply. "Not people help, forest help." Before either adult could question her further, Savannah closed her eyes, her small body growing utterly still. She took several deep breaths, her face relaxing into an expression of profound concentration. The forest around them seemed to quiet, the usual rustling of leaves and chirping of birds fading into an eerie silence. Dr. Brooks felt the hair on her arms rise. As a scientist, she'd been trained to seek rational explanations, to distrust the seemingly supernatural. But as she watched this 7-year-old child communing with the forest in some inexplicable way, she felt her worldview shifting beneath her feet. After nearly a minute of this unnatural stillness, Savannah opened her eyes. "They're coming," she said quietly. "We need to get to the cave, now." "Who's coming?" Connor asked, but Savannah was already moving, scrambling up the rocky slope with the agility of a mountain goat. Dr. Brooks hurriedly packed up her drone. "I don't know what just happened," she said to Connor, "but I think we should follow her." They pursued Savannah up the increasingly steep terrain, struggling to keep pace with her smaller, but somehow more certain form. The little girl moved as if guided by an invisible hand, finding footholds and handholds where the adults saw only sheer rock. Within 15 minutes, they had reached the outcropping Savannah had identified from below. A narrow opening in the rock face revealed a small cave, barely visible unless you knew exactly where to look. Savannah approached slowly, dropping to her knees at the entrance. "It's okay," she called softly into the darkness. "I'm a friend. Shadow sent me." From the depths of the cave came a weak whimpering. Savannah looked back at her father and Dr. Brooks, her finger to her lips, then crawled forward into the cave. Connor started to protest, but Dr. Brooks placed a restraining hand on his arm. "Wait," she whispered. "Let's see." Moments later, Savannah emerged, cradling something in her arms. A tiny wolf pup, its fur still downy, eyes barely open. Behind her, 2 more pups tumbled out, wobbling on uncertain legs. All 3 were thin, clearly hungry, their mother's absence taking a toll. "They need food and water," Savannah said, her voice tight with concern, "and their mother needs to come back." As if on cue, a haunting howl echoed across the mountainside, a sound of distress, of warning. The white wolf, sensing danger approaching her pups. Connor checked his tranquilizer gun once more. "I'm going to try to intercept the closest hunter," he said grimly. "Dr. Brooks, stay with Savannah and the pups. Keep them safe and out of sight." But before he could move, Savannah grabbed his hand. "Wait," she said urgently. "Listen." At first, there was nothing but the sighing of wind through the pines. Then, gradually, another sound emerged, soft at first, then growing in volume and intensity. A rustling, a movement through underbrush, coming from all directions at once. From their vantage point on the ridge, they could see the forest below shifting, coming alive with motion. Animals were moving, not in the random patterns of normal wildlife, but with purpose, with direction. Deer and elk emerged from the trees, forming a living barrier across the path of one hunter. A mountain lion appeared on a rock overlooking another, its tawny body poised for action. And around the third hunter, wolves materialized from the shadows. 5, 6, 7 of them, some with the distinctive markings of Shadow's pack, others from territories beyond. They did not attack, did not growl or bare teeth. They simply surrounded the armed man, their presence unmistakable, undeniable. "Oh my God," Dr. Brooks breathed, lifting her drone controller with shaking hands to capture footage of the extraordinary scene unfolding below them. "This is impossible. Animals from different species, different territories, some natural predators and prey. They're coordinating, they're working together." Connor looked at his daughter with new eyes, not just pride or concern now, but a kind of awe. "You did this?" he asked softly. "You called them?" Savannah nodded, her attention still focused on the tiny pups huddled against her legs. "They know me," she said simply. "Just like the bear did, just like Shadow does. We're connected." Below, the poachers had frozen in confusion and fear. Their radios crackled as they communicated with each other, voices rising in alarm as they described the wall of wildlife that had materialized around them. "This is some kind of trick," one man shouted, his voice carrying up the ridge. "Some ranger tech to scare us off." Another fired a warning shot into the air. The animals did not scatter as expected. The deer and elk stamped nervously but held their ground. The wolves continued their silent vigil. The mountain lion flicked its tail in irritation at the noise. From somewhere deeper in the forest came a new sound. Heavy, deliberate footfalls. A massive grizzly bear emerged from the trees, moving with purpose toward the hunter who had fired his weapon. The man dropped his rifle in panic, scrambling backward until he collided with a boulder, and then, into this tableau of human fear and animal power, came a flash of white. The mother wolf, seizing her opportunity, darted between the distracted hunters and raced toward the ridge where her pups waited. She was beautiful. Not pure white as legends had described, but a pale silver gray that gleamed almost luminous in the dappled forest light. Larger than typical gray wolves, with intelligent amber eyes that surveyed the scene with wild cunning. A small wound on her flank showed where a bullet had grazed her days earlier, the fur matted with dried blood. As she reached the ridge, she slowed, approaching cautiously. She saw her pups, alive and safe, and then she saw Savannah, a human child kneeling beside them. Every instinct would tell a wild mother to attack, to protect her vulnerable offspring from the most dangerous predator in the forest. But the white wolf did not attack. She stopped several yards away, her amber eyes meeting Savannah's blue ones in a long, searching gaze. Some silent communication passed between them, some understanding beyond words or even conscious thought. Slowly, with infinite gentleness, Savannah picked up the weakest pup and held it out toward its mother. "They're hungry," she said softly. "They need you." The white wolf approached, step by careful step, until she was close enough for Savannah to feel her warm breath. With exquisite delicacy, the wolf took her pup from the child's hands, laying it down beside her. The other pups stumbled forward, whimpering with joy as they nuzzled against their mother's fur. Dr. Brooks was recording everything, her scientific mind struggling to process what she was witnessing. "This defies everything we know about wild animal behavior," she murmured. "Especially a mother with vulnerable young. She should be aggressive, protective. Instead, she's accepting human help." "Not human help," Connor corrected quietly. "Savannah's help. There's a difference." Below them, the standoff between poachers and wildlife continued. The men were clearly terrified now, huddled together as the circle of animals maintained their silent vigil. In the distance, sirens wailed, the ranger backup finally arriving. The white wolf's ears pricked at the sound. She looked at Savannah once more, then gently picked up the weakest pup in her mouth. The meaning was clear. It was time to leave, to find a new den, safer from human intrusion. "Wait," Savannah said suddenly. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the small green bear carving Joseph's standing bear had given her. With solemn ceremony, she placed it on the ground before the wolf. "For protection," she whispered. The wolf regarded the tiny object, then used her nose to nudge it closer to Savannah. A refusal, or perhaps a deeper message, that the true protection existed not in talismans but in the connection between them. Savannah understood. She picked up the carving and returned it to her pocket. "I'll keep it safe until you need it," she promised. With that, the white wolf gathered her remaining pups and disappeared into the rocks, finding a hidden path down the other side of the ridge, away from the hunters, away from human interference. As she vanished from sight, a ripple seemed to pass through the forest below. The animals began to disperse, melting back into the trees as silently as they had appeared. By the time the ranger team reached the poachers, only Connor, Dr. Brooks, and Savannah remained as witnesses to what had truly happened. The hunters, their bravado shattered, surrendered without resistance, babbling about witchcraft and animal mind control. "You'll want to see this," Dr. Brooks told the lead ranger, holding out her tablet with the drone footage. But when she looked at the screen, her face fell in confusion. Where there should have been extraordinary images of multiple species working in coordinated action, there was only static, digital corruption rendering the files unviewable. Connor met his daughter's eyes across the clearing. Savannah's expression was calm, unsurprised. Some things, it seemed, were not meant to be proven or explained, only experienced, only remembered by those present in the moment. Later, as they made their way back to the cabin in the fading light of evening, Dr. Brooks walked beside Savannah, her scientific curiosity still burning despite the lost evidence. "How did you do it?" she asked quietly. "How did you call them?" Savannah considered the question with the thoughtful seriousness that made her seem so much older than her years. "I didn't call them, not exactly," she finally replied. "I just remembered them, and they remembered me." "Remembered you from what?" "From before," Savannah said simply. "From always. From the bear." Dr. Brooks wanted to press further, but something in the child's serene expression stopped her. Some mysteries, perhaps, were not meant to be dissected and labeled. Some connections existed beyond the reach of scientific understanding. That night, as Savannah slept peacefully in her bed, Connor and Lily sat with Dr. Brooks on the cabin porch, watching the stars emerge in the clear mountain sky. The events of the day hung between them, both wondrous and unsettling. "What will you tell your colleagues?" Lily asked finally. "About what you saw today?" Dr. Brooks stared into her mug of tea, its warmth a poor match for the chill of uncertainty that had settled in her bones. "I don't know," she admitted. "Without the footage, I have no proof. Just the word of a forest ranger and my own observations. Hardly enough to upend established scientific understanding of interspecies behavior." "Would you even want that proof if you had it?" Connor asked quietly. "Think about what would happen to Savannah if the world knew what she can do. Scientists, government agencies, media, they'd never leave her alone. She'd become a specimen, a subject, not a child." Dr. Brooks nodded slowly. "I've thought about that. It's why I'm almost glad the footage was corrupted." She looked up at them, her professional demeanor giving way to genuine emotion. "Your daughter is extraordinary. She's experiencing a connection with the natural world that most humans lost thousands of years ago, if we ever had it at all. That's precious, sacred even. It deserves protection." "So you won't report this?" Lily pressed. "I'll report that we assisted in apprehending illegal poachers," Dr. Brooks said carefully. "I'll note that unusual wildlife behavior was observed. Nothing more specific." She paused, then added, "But I'd like your permission to stay in touch with Savannah. Not to study her or exploit her gift, but to learn from her. There are questions about animal consciousness, about interspecies communication, that I've spent my career trying to answer. Your daughter seems to know those answers intuitively." Connor and Lily exchanged glances, years of shared understanding passing between them in a single look. "That would be Savannah's decision," Lily said finally. "But I think she'd like that. She's been looking for someone who understands what she experiences, someone besides the animals themselves." Dr. Brooks smiled, a weight lifting from her shoulders. "Thank you. I promise I'll respect her boundaries and her gift." As they spoke, a soft howl echoed from the distant mountains, the white wolf, calling to her pack from her new sanctuary. In her bedroom, Savannah stirred in her sleep, a small smile touching her lips as she dreamed of running with wolves through moonlit forests. 3 years passed, bringing changes both subtle and profound. Savannah grew taller, her childish roundness giving way to the lankier frame of early adolescence. Her connection with the forest deepened, becoming more nuanced, more controlled. She no longer spoke so openly about talking with animals or feeling the tree's emotions, having learned from occasional encounters with disbelieving strangers that her experiences fell outside what most considered possible. Dr. Brooks visited regularly, sometimes staying for weeks in a small cabin she'd purchased nearby. True to her word, she never treated Savannah as a research subject. Instead, they formed a genuine friendship, the scientist learning to see the natural world through the child's unique perspective, while Savannah gained a framework for understanding her own abilities. "You're not alone, you know," Dr. Brooks told her one autumn afternoon as they sat by a mountain stream watching otters play in the shallows. "Throughout human history, there have been individuals with gifts similar to yours. Indigenous cultures called them many things: shamans, medicine people, dreamwalkers. They served as bridges between the human world and the natural one." Savannah tossed a pebble into the water, watching the ripples spread. At 10, she was becoming more aware of her difference from other children, more conscious of the weight of her gift. "There aren't many now, though, are there?" "No," Dr. Brooks admitted. As human societies became more technological, more separated from nature, the gift became rarer. Or perhaps it was always there, but people stopped recognizing and nurturing it. She paused, choosing her words carefully. That's why what you can do is so important, Savannah. You're keeping alive a connection that most of humanity has forgotten. The white wolf's pack had remained in the high country, rarely seen by human eyes but thriving under their unusual leader. Shadow, now fully grown, occasionally visited the edges of the Adams property, especially when Savannah was outside alone. The scientists studying wolf behavior in the region were baffled by the pack's unusual territorial patterns and social structures, never suspecting the true nature of their connection to a human child. It was Shadow who brought the first warning, appearing at the forest's edge one crisp October morning as Savannah walked to the waiting school bus. The wolf did not approach. He never did when others were present, but his posture, his intent gaze, his very presence so close to the road communicated urgency. "Something's wrong," Savannah murmured, stopping in her tracks. "Hurry up, Savannah," called Michael Hayes, a classmate who lived down the road and shared her bus stop. "Bus is coming." "You go ahead," she replied, her attention fixed on the wolf. "Tell them I'm sick today." Michael rolled his eyes. "Your parents will kill you for skipping." "It's important," Savannah insisted. "Please, Michael." Perhaps it was the intensity in her voice, or perhaps Michael had lived in this community long enough to hear the whispers about Savannah Adams and her strange way with animals. Whatever the reason, he shrugged and continued to the bus stop alone. As soon as he was out of sight, Savannah approached the tree line where Shadow waited. "What is it?" she asked quietly, dropping to one knee before the wolf. "What's happened?" Shadow didn't respond in words. He never did. But images formed in Savannah's mind. Men in the high country. Many men with equipment. Vehicles carving new roads through pristine forest. The white wolf watching from hiding, her pack scattered to avoid detection. A sense of violation, of territory breached, of danger approaching. "Where?" Savannah pressed, her heart racing with the borrowed anxiety of the wolves. Shadow turned his head toward the northeast, toward a remote area of the forest that had, until now, remained largely untouched by human development. "I'll tell my dad," she promised. "He'll know what to do." But Shadow wasn't finished. More images flowed into Savannah's consciousness. Dark liquid bubbling from the ground, fish floating belly up in a once clear stream, birds falling from the sky. A premonition of death spreading through the forest, beginning in that distant northeastern corner but flowing outward like poison. "Oil," Savannah whispered, understanding dawning. "They're looking for oil." Shadow made a soft sound of agreement. The wolf turned to go, his message delivered, but Savannah called him back. "Wait, is she okay, the white wolf?" A final image formed. The white wolf, standing on a high ridge, gazing down at the human incursion with ancient, knowing eyes. Around her neck, barely visible beneath her thick fur, was a leather cord from which hung a small green carving, the bear totem that Savannah had once offered for protection. Savannah gasped. She kept it? But how? She had returned the carving to her pocket that day 3 years ago, had taken it home, had placed it in her treasure box for safekeeping. Shadow offered no explanation, only a sense of connection, of magic older than human understanding. Then he was gone, a gray ghost melting into the forest shadows. Savannah ran home, bursting through the cabin door with an urgency that startled Lily, who was working on her laptop at the kitchen table. "Mom, where's Dad? Something's happening in the forest, something bad." Lily had long since learned to take her daughter's warnings seriously. "He's at a regional planning meeting in town. What's going on, Savannah?" "Men in the northeast section, the remote area past Thunder Ridge. They're looking for oil, I think. The animals are frightened. The water is being poisoned." The words tumbled out in a rush. Savannah, struggling to translate the pure, emotional knowledge she had received from Shadow into terms her mother would understand. Lily was already reaching for her phone. "I'll call your father. He can alert the Park Service." But even as she dialed, Savannah knew it wouldn't be enough. Official channels moved slowly, bound by regulations and jurisdictional issues. What was happening in the forest needed immediate attention. "Call Doctor Brooks, too," she said, "and Joseph Standing Bear." Joseph Standing Bear had become a regular visitor to their home over the years, the Blackfeet elder recognizing in Savannah a gift his people had honored for generations. He had taught her traditional songs that calmed anxious animals, had shown her plants with healing properties, had guided her in understanding the responsibilities that came with her unusual connection to the natural world. Within hours, an unlikely group had assembled in the Adams cabin. Connor in his ranger uniform, Dr. Brooks with her scientific credentials, Joseph Standing Bear with his ancient wisdom, and 10-year-old Savannah with her unique ability to communicate across species barriers. Maps were spread across the table as Connor marked the area Savannah had identified. "It has to be the Wellstone Energy Survey," he said grimly. "They've been pushing for exploration permits for months, but the environmental impact review isn't complete. They're supposed to be limited to non-invasive assessment work only." "Wellstone rarely plays by the rules," Dr. Brooks added. "I've encountered their operations in 3 different preserves. They always claim to prioritize environmental concerns, but their track record suggests otherwise." Joseph Standing Bear studied the map in silence, his weathered fingers tracing the contours of the land. "This area," he said finally, "has been sacred to my people for countless generations. The waters there feed the entire region. If they are poisoned—" "But how could Shadow know about oil exploration?" Lily asked. "Wolves don't understand human industry." "They understand change," Savannah said quietly. "They understand danger. They sense things we can't, chemicals in the water, disturbances in the earth." Connor folded the map decisively. "I'll contact my supervisor. Request an immediate inspection of the Wellstone operation. If they're exceeding their permit limitations, we can shut them down." "That could take days," Dr. Brooks pointed out. "Bureaucracy moves slowly, and Wellstone has political connections. By the time you get approval, the damage could be extensive." "What about the media?" Lily suggested. "If word got out that a major energy company was violating environmental regulations in protected forest land." Joseph Standing Bear shook his head. "Who would believe without proof? And gathering that proof would require access to land they now control." A heavy silence fell over the room as each adult recognized the constraints of their official positions, the limitations of working within established systems. It was Savannah who finally spoke, her young voice steady with conviction. "I need to go there," she said simply. "I need to see for myself what's happening. The animals will show me the truth." "Absolutely not," Connor replied immediately. "If Wellstone is operating illegally, these could be dangerous people, Savannah. I won't risk your safety." "Connor's right," Lily added. "This is a job for the authorities, not a 10-year-old girl." Savannah looked to Dr. Brooks, hoping for support, but the scientist reluctantly shook her head. I understand your connection to the forest, Savannah, but this situation requires legal intervention, not what? Savannah challenged, a rare flash of anger coloring her words. Not what I can do, not who I am. She stood, facing the adults who had supported and protected her gift for years, but who now seemed unable to understand its purpose. Why do you think I can do these things if not for moments like this? The forest is asking for help. The animals, the trees, the water itself. They're asking me. Joseph Standing Bear had remained silent during this exchange, his dark eyes watchful. Now he spoke, his voice carrying the weight of generations. The child speaks truth, he said quietly. Such gifts are not given without reason. They are given for times when the balance between worlds must be restored. Joseph, you can't seriously be suggesting we send Savannah into a potentially dangerous situation, Lily protested. The elder smiled gently. I suggest nothing of the sort. No child should face such dangers alone. He straightened, decision made. I will go with her. Both of you. Connor's face reflected his concern. Joseph, with all due respect, you're in your 70s and Savannah is 10. How could you possibly? We will not go alone, Joseph said with quiet certainty. Will we, little listener? Savannah met his gaze, understanding flowing between them. No, she agreed. We won't be alone. Dr. Brooks looked between them, scientific skepticism battling with what she had witnessed over the past 3 years. You're talking about the animals, she said slowly. The wolves, perhaps others. Joseph nodded. The forest protects its own, and Savannah Adams is very much its own. Discussions continued late into the night, arguments flaring and subsiding as the adults wrestled with impossible choices. In the end, a compromise was reached. Connor would approach the situation through official channels, requesting an emergency inspection. Simultaneously, Joseph Standing Bear would take Savannah to a traditional Blackfeet observation point overlooking the area in question, close enough to witness any environmental violations, but far enough to remain safe from direct confrontation. Dr. Brooks, with her scientific credentials, would accompany them, documenting any evidence of environmental damage with professional equipment that would stand up to legal scrutiny. Lily would coordinate from home, maintaining communication and ready to alert authorities if the situation escalated. Early the next morning, they set out. Connor heading to the ranger station to file official reports, while Joseph led Savannah and Dr. Brooks along ancient trails known only to his people. The paths were barely visible to untrained eyes, winding through dense forest and across rocky outcroppings that offered natural concealment. These ways were old when my grandfather's grandfather was young, Joseph told Savannah as they navigated a particularly challenging section. Our people used them to observe without being observed, to watch game migrations, to monitor rival tribes, to live in harmony with the land while understanding its patterns. Savannah moved with natural grace along the difficult terrain, her feet finding purchase as if guided by some internal map. Dr. Brooks struggled more, her city-dwelling background evident in her cautious steps and frequent pauses to catch her breath. Are you sure this route is necessary? She asked, after nearly stumbling down a steep incline. There must be easier ways to reach an observation point. Joseph's weathered face creased in a smile. Easier paths are also more obvious paths, Doctor. Brooks, we seek to observe without being observed, yes? As they climbed higher, the forest thinned, giving way to rocky outcroppings that offered spectacular views of the valley below. Joseph led them to a natural stone alcove, partially concealed by stunted pines, but providing a clear sightline to the northeastern section where Wellstone Energy had established their operation. Even from this distance, the disruption was evident. Heavy equipment had carved ugly scars through the pristine forest. A temporary camp had been established near a flowing stream, with prefabricated buildings and equipment storage areas. Vehicles moved along newly created roads, their diesel engines sending plumes of exhaust into the clear mountain air. Dr. Brooks unpacked her equipment, a high-powered spotting scope, a camera with telephoto lens, air and water testing kits that could detect contaminants from a distance. As she worked, Savannah sat cross-legged at the edge of the alcove, her eyes closed, her breathing deep and measured. "What is she doing?" Dr. Brooks whispered to Joseph. "Listening," the elder replied simply, "not with her ears." Savannah's consciousness expanded outward, flowing like water down the mountainside and across the valley. She felt the distress of trees whose roots had been severed by heavy machinery, the confusion of birds whose nesting sites had been destroyed, the fear of